But it's great to meet you. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
taking a minute out for the program today. I appreciate it.
absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You bet. So, as you've mentioned, you've listened to some episodes. You know, my first question is always COVID, and I think it's something that we don't talk about much. And I
Agreed.
think for a long time, no one wanted to, but maybe now it's okay. But with it being 6 years ago, it was
Mhm.
so momentous for all of us in the way we
Yeah.
lived our lives and we worked. How did you get through that era, and how has it changed the way that you do things today?
I absolutely love that you start with this question because I agree. Like it's almost like it's like PT, everyone has PTSD, rightly so, in varying forms. But it's like such a part of our lives now. It's a part of our stories from now until forever. And so I love that you start with this. For me, I had a very interesting experience. I was 8 months pregnant when we went into lockdown. And anyone that was also pregnant at that time knows how scary and strange and confusing it was. I want to hold space for everyone and those experiences that they have. I was very fortunate that my experience was incredible. Arriving at the airport was like being in ET, where you're walking through these tented entryways and the hospital, which is typically like almost like a shopping mall with the amount of people that are in hospitals, it was just empty, quiet. And so it was this very surreal experience, but there was also no social pressure. It was quiet, it was peaceful, which was something that I was really working on bringing through during my pregnancy. And I was very fortunate. My husband was able to be with me the entire time. And we were very well taken care of. It was kind of like a mini vacation, quite frankly, for 2 days in the hospital, just us and our new baby. Um, but then the flip side of that was that also my mother was about 2 years into her ALS diagnosis. And so she was very ill. She was on the other side of the country. And we were forced to constantly, from the time my daughter was 3 months old, we just started traveling back and forth from Toronto to Vancouver, which people probably thought we were crazy for. But to be honest, being on a plane was almost one of the safest places to be because there was nobody on the plane. And but there was a lot of pressure that came along with that because it was just this odd time. It was just such a weird experience, and we weren't able to share in the same way that we would have had we not been in that pandemic. And then my mom passed away when my daughter was a year. So that was a year into the pandemic. So it was this very strange experience. We weren't able to celebrate her life when she passed and all of those things. And at the same time, I was dealing with new life in this bubble world pandemic that we were in. How it's changed things for me. I was already working remotely at that time. I've been working, remotely with companies since 2018. But what shifted for me was that everybody else moved into that environment as well. And it became more of a regular part of our lives now. It's much more common to have remote work available. People are now using things like video conferencing. When I worked remotely before the pandemic, everything was still on the
Yep.
phone. And so I think it's opened up possibilities and opportunities, in terms of work and being able to reach people and make an impact. And it also shifted my view and my approach. And this was also because I had a child, mind you, but with regards to travel.
Yeah.
I worked in corporate. I was on the road a lot all the time, and not having to be on the road for, basically a couple years during the pandemic really changed. I love traveling. I'm a nomad at heart. Like I love being in airports. I love that energy, but I no longer wanted to do it in the same way. And I wanted to do it more on my terms instead of because I had to for work. And so that actually made me shift everything in my life and ultimately led to the work I do now with the Inflection Method.
It's interesting during that time. I remember my mother-in-law was making a little elf house out of a milk jug, and she was trying to cut the top off. So I was like, "Here, I'll give it a shot." I had the razor blade, and I pulled it and ripped my hand open. And
Ah,
I remember my wife was freaking out, like, "Oh my God, there's COVID, and you're going to the hospital." I'm like, "This is the safest place to go. Are you kidding me? If there was any place." Plus, the guy in there was a hardcore ER doctor. He was supposed to go to Machu Picchu. He was going to climb it, and I'm like, "Can you just tell me what's going on with this? Like, what?" And he just laid it all out. Like who's going to be the most vulnerable? Because at that point, no one really knew. We kept getting all these different weird things. But yeah, I mean, there was things like I imagine airplanes and other places were totally safe to go to. So what a
yeah.
strange time for
It
sure.
was a very strange time. A little on the light side of things, because I traveled so much, I had tons of upgrades and I was getting all of my upgrades every time I asked for them.
Yeah.
So my daughter was by the time she was one, she had been on 12 flights and every single one of them was in business class. I was like, "Oh my God, we're going to ruin her." It hasn't been that way since, but yeah, it was an interesting time and yeah, we're forever changed. And my daughter will forever be a
Yeah.
pandemic baby,
Yeah.
you know? It's like,
Yeah.
stop telling me that story. She's going to be like, when she's a teenager, but it's true. It's been a defining moment for anyone that lived it, no matter what age you were, what you went through, all of it. It was defining no matter how you look at it.
And I keep wanting to get this idea to Spielberg for a Netflix series. I would love to have. So when you're in the womb, I remember when my son was in that position, it was always about music and sounds and conversations, and it kind of was like it would seep into their brains and it would get
Yeah.
into there and it would make them smarter. So what if all of those kids during that time period had more activity around them, and they become the COVID kids that come up with the antidote to end the COVID strain. They become the scientists and the biologists, but they have a little bit of a special thing because they were born during that time. I think it would be fun to look into that, where they would finally eradicate that whole SARS COVID strand because they
Yeah.
were the ones that had to live through it. It would be the ultimate irony sci-fi. Anyway, so
Yeah. Love
we'll
that.
yeah, it'd be fun. It would totally be fun. The parents would have a big role in it too because they probably have better genes. But at any rate, let's get into the work that you're doing today. I want to know if I put you in front of a bunch of kids at career day, they're 12 or 13 years old and they want to know what you do for a living. How do you synthesize your day job to their brains?
Sure. So, in essence, you can view me as a coach. An athlete or a dancer or anything, they have a coach. And the coach is there to help you understand yourself better so that you can show up more fully as yourself. It's not about telling you what to do. It's more about helping you uncover for yourself who you are, how you're innately wired, and how you better make decisions, how you deal with pressure, how you relate to other people, and also help you understand why you're here and the work that you want to do in the world. So, in a nutshell, that's ultimately the work that I do now with the inflection method. And it's really not about, I guess, the difference in terms of coaching as it relates to athletes or even dancers. It's not about like high performance. That's not what I'm about. It's really about going inside and understanding who you are and how you're innately wired to move through the world.
So when you were that age at career day, what did you want to be when you grew up? What was your dream job?
At that age, I wanted to be a marine biologist.
Okay. Okay.
It's been a long, windy road. My goal was to be a marine biologist. I studied my whole life basically to become a marine biologist until I got to university. I was in university, I think it was third year, so I was pretty far along, and I realized I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this with my life. I don't want to stare through a microscope for the rest of my life. I'm an innately social person, and I just realized it wasn't really ultimately what I needed to be doing with my life. And a family friend of mine, uh, planted a seed, and I realized that communications was really my kind of innate talent, if you were, if you will. And I pivoted, and I ended up pivoting into social sciences, finished my degree, and then went back to school for marketing and communications. And then I went into the corporate world as a communications advisor, and climbed my way up the ladder over 20 years in corporate communications and investor relations. And which I still do. I have two businesses actually. One area is Inflection Communications, where I work as a fractional communications officer for companies in the capital markets. But then the Inflection Method was really born out of, you know, 20, 30 years of lived experience of exploring and curiosity and coming to my own personal inflection points while I moved through my career, and looking for support and help and training to navigate those inflection points, and just never really being able to find what it was that I was looking for, or people that I connected with and really wanted to work with. And so when I came to my last inflection point, I was like, this is the time. This is the moment to finally step into that role of more of an advisor, a leadership advisor, and build out a body of work that helps leaders navigating their own inflection points.
So who was that coach for you? Who was that inspirational person that allowed you to feel like this is your calling? You're going to help others get to that point. Did you have one that was seminal in your life?
You know, I I like I said, I never really found the coach that I was looking for. So my mentors and my inspirational voices were actually people I don't necessarily know. And there were two kind of avenues in particular that got me onto this path. And it was back in like the 2010s, that kind of space and era. One of them was actually the Goop newsletter, Gwyneth Paltrow. And she at the time, was fresh on the scene with her blog, and she spoke to parts of me that were not the corporate side of my life or the very traditional upbringing that I had that I'd come from. Although I grew up with an understanding that alternative medicine and alternative strategies to health and well-being, and just general traditional strategies for health and well-being, were something that were integral to your life. That's very much how I did grow up. And she spoke to that a lot. And one of the things that she created awareness about for me was meditation. And she introduced her readers to the Headspace app. And it was 2009. I'll never forget it. And I started meditating through Headspace. It wasn't an app at that time, it was a website.
Yeah.
And I started my daily meditation practice, which I single-handedly credit with being able to navigate all of the inflection points that I've come up in my life more and more progressively as I've continued on with that practice over the course of the now, almost 15 years. And then the other inspirational voice was more tapping into my spiritual side and my own understanding of spirituality and what that means for me. And that was through Oprah, as it was for many people as well. But she had this show on Sundays called Super Sold Sundays. And one episode, she showcased three of the up and coming voices, if you will. It was Marie Forleo, Gabby Bernstein, and Mastin Kipp. And it was like a light bulb went off for me, not only in terms of spirituality and understanding and developing, my own understanding of spirituality for myself, but it opened my mind to the possibilities of what we can do with our lives that isn't this traditional progression through career, staying in the same job for, 50 years and getting the gold watch. It really it really sparked that idea in me to be able to step out and create a space that I was so yearning for, which is now the Inflection Method, because I saw these three individuals who had done it for themselves.
So what is that energy for you every day? Because when you're helping people, there's a level of you that has to walk into their world, and there's a lot to navigate. And you have your mind and your body, you have your soul and your world. So how do you relegate and protect yourself from all of the things that will come in with clients do your other job, take care of your soul. How does all of that work for you every day when the alarm does or doesn't go off?
Yeah, I love that question. Doesn't go off, by the way. I turned off my alarm long time ago.
Nice.
That's a great question. So, it's actually a practice I learned through Gabby Bernstein and related to protecting your energy. And it's like this idea that when I go into spaces, and whether that's in the corporate world, when I walk into a conference or an investor meeting, or whether it's through my leadership advisory, it's like putting on this cloak and you zip it up and you protect yourself from all of the energy that is around you. And it's important to be really conscious of that because for me, I know this about myself. I absorb people's energy. And this is something that we learn through human design, which is one of the practical tools that I use in my advisory practice, where some of us are very open and some of us are more defined. For those of us that are open, we absorb energy from other people. That's where the conditioning comes from, where we start to put on a persona of somebody else's persona instead of coming from our own. And I'm very susceptible to that, like to the point where I lived in London for a little while and I started speaking with an accent. So these kinds, I'm very susceptible to taking on other people's energy. And so I'm very conscious of that, and also always leading with this idea of I'm here to serve, I'm here to help, I'm here to be, of support for the person that I'm speaking with, and I'm here to work with, and that really helps me to bring it a different lens as opposed to like absorbing, whatever my clients are going through. It's not perfect, mind you. I'm still human. But it's very much about bringing this conscientiousness to how you're meeting the person in front of you, and having that understanding about human design, I think also really helps. It's something that I didn't know before, although I sensed about myself. And now that I have that understanding for myself as well as for others, that we all have our own designs. We're all innately wired in our own way. And when two people or three people or four people come together, that wiring, that energy actually creates, a spark. It can be sparky good or it can be sparky bad. And so having that understanding about how we move through the world and how humans just are, really helps me to protect my own energy. I'm also very, very, very much proponent, a supporter of self-care, whatever that means for you, a minute a day, 5 minutes a day, an hour a day, whatever you can find, because it's important that we put ourselves first and that we really take care of our own health and well-being, because if we don't do that, then we can't show up for others.
So, if you had a dream tonight, ran into that young version of you that wanted to get into marine biology,
Mhm.
and you walked into the room and there was a projector, a film projector, and you hit play, and there was a 60-second highlight reel of this life you've lived, the choices you've made, successes, everything that you've gone through, would that young version of you believe your life turned out this way?
Would they believe? Absolutely. I mean, I don't think there was ever any doubt in my mind that, and it was subconscious. It wasn't even like this like anything I do I can achieve. I just never doubted that whatever I wanted to do, I would achieve. And I think that was a generational thing. I think there's a lot of people from my generation that feel that way and have navigated life that way. Um, Now, would I have ever expected to have had the windy road that led me to where I am today? Absolutely not. I mean, there's never, I was, to me, it was traditional career path, sciences all the way. I intended to be on the ocean all the time. That didn't work out. But I think my younger self would be amazed at everything that I've navigated and how I've really managed to always find the the why within it all. I grew up, I always had this mantra of everything happens for a reason. And that used to be very heady and like kind of woo, but over time, I've understood that everything happens for a reason is more that there's always a lesson to be learned. And there's also always a way to turn something that maybe didn't work out the way you wanted it to into something that works for you in the long run.
So when you look at that summary of your life, what are you ultimately the happiest about, the proudest of?
Probably what I just kind of alluded to is this ability to take every single inflection point I've met in my life, and not to say that it was easy or I just like, was toxically positive about it and at all times. Definitely not. There were definitely a lot of tears and a lot of, hard moments, but especially now that I'm older, I'm in my 40s, I have this calmness about it all now because of all of the work that I've done over the course of the last 20, 30 years on myself, on understanding people around me, the various trainings I've done, the work that I've done, and this constant pursuit and a belief that we can do work that we love, that lights us up, and that there's no reason to settle. And there's also no reason to sell your soul in order to get what you want, if you
Yeah.
will. And I've been very committed to that for myself and for others around me. I've always been a cheerleader about that for everyone around me. And that is ultimately something I'm incredibly proud of, is just kind of keeping my eye on that prize.
So let's get to the intersection, the true fork of the road with your soul. Everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Oh, this is such an interesting question. We're so good at looking out, and so it's harder to look in. But I do think I'm a person that when I put my mind to something, I can definitely figure out how to achieve it. And I don't mean in this like very like high performing kind of way. It's a much more like a groundedness in how I approach my life. I go with the flow. I remain flexible and adaptable. And but I always know that the ultimate goal is going towards this feeling of joy, of peace, of fulfillment, of well-being in my own body and my mind. And that is what I'm always striving for. I want that for other people. And so whenever I meet someone or I'm with someone, and I've learned how to be more reserved about this, but that's always what I'm leading with, that I want everyone to understand and believe for themselves that that is possible for them too.
So if anybody wants to take the next step, they have questions, they want to hire you, they want to reach out, any of the good business, where do they go?
Thanks for asking. What I offer is what's called an inflection session. It's a complimentary session, 45-minute session, one-on-one with me, where we sit down to explore what it is that is weighing on you right now, what might be holding you back, or where you want to find more space and joy in your life. And I guide you through a session, and we try to unpack a little bit of that, and hopefully you walk away with some shifts. And you can find out more about that on my website at theinflectionmethod.com/session.
Okay. I will put all these links in the show notes. Fiona, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. Best of luck with everything. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's been such a great chat. All
Yes,
the best.
absolutely. Yes.